Welcome to Rise Up with Robby, the live stream where politics, sports, and faith come together to inspire, challenge, and empower. Your host is Robby Wells, former NCAA Division I football coach, motivational speaker, author, and former presidential candidate. Every week, we will tackle today's biggest issues, explore the world of sports, and discover how faith and purpose can help you overcome any obstacle. Get ready for bold conversations and practical inspiration. It's time to rise up.
Welcome to the Rise Up with Robby podcast. I'm Robby Wells, and we have a very special guest coming to you today from Orlando, Florida. His name is Mark Green. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He also does a lot of humanitarian work. He's a 5th degree black belt. Good friend of mine, also a U.S. ambassador to the International Human Rights Peace Commission. Goes all over the world speaking and helping people any way that he possibly can. You are really in for a treat today. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump right into a conversation with Mark Green.
I'm Robby Wells. I was a former college football coach, also ran for president of the United States. Understand this, you're going to go through some dark times. Some of you in here may be going through them, and that's why you're new to this business, okay? Midnight's the darkest part of any day. Just remember, midnight does not last very long, because at 12:01 it's morning, and it's time to rise up, and it's time to blast off. Understand this, you're going to get better and better and better. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Fail big. Because if you fail big, you're going to learn from it and you're going to move on from it. But always take advice from those that have been there and they have done that. You see, whether you are black or white, young or old, male or female, a member of the LGBTQ community, whatever your religion may be, we're all very unique in this room right here. We can celebrate our differences because we've got one common bond. We are all Americans and we all work for the greatest company on the face of this planet, Family First Life.
Whatever your insurance needs are, we can help you right here at Rise Up USA. Empower yourself, empower your family, give your family peace of mind to know that in the event that something happens to you, they're going to be able to continue moving forward. We are joined today with retired Lieutenant Colonel Mark Green, great friend of mine, has done some amazing things throughout his adult life. And without any further ado, Colonel, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm just blessed to be here and blessed to be on the podcast and see you again and just reconnect and share a little story and just be here in the presence of some great people. And I realize that we all have our moments in life, and we all have our that point where we feel like, look, I just want to do the best and be the best that I am, without the thought of fame. Just be the best at who you are and do what you do, and I feel like that's how I'm driven, and I'm driven by faith. Faith has been like the biggest pillar for me lately. I just got baptized in the Kenai River when I was up salmon fishing with some buddies. And it just like renewed me, and just like I came back so energized. I realized I felt like I was 10 years younger and 10 pounds lighter.
Well, that's awesome. So For those of you that are tuning in today, Colonel Green and I, we met, what was that, I guess about 7 years ago?
Yeah,
I
right
guess it
around
was
there.
about 7 years ago. And the thing, you and I both live on the East Coast, but it took us both going all the way to Chennai, India, at an event there for the International Human Rights Peace Commission. And we ended up spending about 4 or 5 days, I think, going across parts of India and
Yep.
meeting with the people there and speaking to the people there. It was quite an experience.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I think that's the thing, is that when you get out there and you sometimes you say yes when you're not really sure. There's those moments where you're like, well, let me just go do this because this is a calling. I got called to speak for 100 churches. I've never done that in my life. And then when I got there and met you and we had breakfast and we started talking, and I was like, wow, what a platform Robby has. We started meeting some of the ministry and some of the people from India that we just didn't have any idea we were going to meet, I think. That were very powerful people in India, and some of the ministers and that. And it really taught me that if you think low, you'll stay low. If you think high, you'll go high.
Yeah.
And a belief system of let me stretch myself sometimes bigger than I think I might. And that can be fearful territory at times, because you're stepping into something new, or you're stepping into something you're not used to yet. But I think that's where belief comes in big. It's like, look, if I believe I can achieve something bigger, I'm just gonna put that in my heart and my head, and and then I'm gonna get the tenacity to get through it.
Well, and when we were there in India, I remember stepping off the plane, how hot it was that summer. In
Oh yeah.
fact, they had a water shortage. I don't know if you remember that, but all of the reservoirs were dried up. And you're talking about a city with over 10 million people that didn't have any water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a major, major problem. And we actually got to talk with some of the government officials about that problem and just some ideas that we had. Now, whether those ideas were implemented or not, I'm not sure. But we were right in the middle of it, being able to talk to those people, because they were in some desperate times.
Yeah. It definitely was. I remember that. I remember seeing the trucks with all the lines of people lined up to fill up their pots of water in the paper. And yeah, it was definitely a rough time for them.
It was very rough, very rough. I also remember when we drove one day about 5 hours one way, heading to a village um, to meet and talk with a group of people out there. And halfway there, we stopped. It's just an open market on the side of the road, and this little girl, she couldn't have been more than 8 years old, I think. She was a precious little child, and she was selling vegetables. And I felt so bad. I was like, man, I just want to buy everything this girl's got. And her dad wouldn't let us do that. You remember we tried to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, in fact, I've got pictures of that. I'll go back and I'll pull those up sometime. But yeah, I think about um, going to India and some of the nicest, uh, just good-hearted people that you're going to meet anywhere, that really uh, don't have it nearly what we have here in America, of course. And for those that are here in America that whine and complain about how bad things are, I
Hmm.
wish that they could all just get on a plane
And see
and
it.
go there to
Yeah.
Chennai just for a couple of days and then come back. They probably have a much greater appreciation for their home.
I would agree. I mean, I think it changes lives when you go around to different countries and you see poverty, you see pain, you see the lack, but you also see the other side of that. You see people who are not in those situations,
Right.
and you meet some really great people on of all spectrums when you travel. And I think like I know friends of mine that have never left their own zip code.
Right.
And I don't know that they've ever really experienced life like some of us have, because we've moved around and traveled our lives. Or, for me, I served in the military, so obviously, like I got deployed and I was in Afghanistan and I know what it was like to be there. You want to talk about heat, we were melting
Oh, yeah.
computers in vinyl tents. And so I know what that feels like. And my job while I was there was I was an inspector general, so I had to deal with people's problems every day, and be the eyes, ears, voice, and conscience of the commander on the ground, and then go out and do assessments of the forward operating bases and the combat outposts all across from the Red Desert all the way over from Pakistan to Iran, the other side of the borders. And we were on a lot of helicopters. It was hot. It was really not an easy task. Some units had it rougher than others, of course, depending on where they were, what their mission was, and what they had to do. But to collect those problems up and try to keep the war fight moving, and do assessments on the ground, food, fuel, ammo, security, religious services, check on the soldiers' morale, everything, and then bring those reports back to see what we could do to help keep things moving until at such a time that that job was done. I came back 30 pounds lighter. I aggravated an injury and had to get a major surgery and learn how to walk again. Transformation was really difficult, so I ended up writing a book about my own transformation, about how I had to rest and reset my mind and remove problems and negativity and things that I wasn't ready for. New issues that came up that like my health. I couldn't run anymore, and I used to love to run because I was a paratrooper. I mean, we ran all the time.
That's right.
I was an Army athlete. I loved to run and loved to have strong legs, and that feeling of endorphins after you get a great sweat and just pull everything off and you feel that cool air hit the muscles. I know that feeling, and it's just like feels so good. It's like. So anybody that's an athlete knows that feeling. It's like, oh, just take the stuff off. Oh, it's like heaven, right? So.
Well, you're exactly right, and I go back to something you just said about being in Afghanistan. The terrain there is so difficult, especially when you're in theater. And I think back even before we were there. You think back when Russia invaded Afghanistan in the 80s, and it did not fare that well for Russia. And I'm thinking the whole time, this is going to be a very tough challenge for the U.S. military going into Afghanistan, because you saw everything that happened to Russia, and it was not good. And we all think that Russia is big and bad and one of the world's superpowers, and they are, and we are too. But in that situation, they didn't do that well. And yet we went in and
a lot
had
of it
some
is
success.
there. Yeah, it's difficult. And, like the one thing that I think I bring back that I really feel that now still sits with me is there was a captain. His name was Mark Garner, and he was out at one of the combat outposts, and not the forward operating bases, because those were larger and they were more protected because you had more security. But the combat outposts were the small little pockets all over in the valleys and of Afghanistan, and really rough, tough places where they were right up next to the fight. And that captain, I remember going out there to the field, and we showed up and we were doing our assessment and everything, and I just asked him how things were going, and he shared with me what he needed and everything. And I brought the report back, and a couple days later, every time a fallen soldier, no matter what country it was from, that was supporting us in the international security peacekeeping or Afghan force passed, we would go to the green ramp and pay our respects to that fallen soldier. And that next week, usually it's the middle of the night, and you'd go down to the airfield where the C-17 would show up to go to Dover or wherever it was taking the fallen, and they read out his name, and it was just a few days after I was eye to eye with him, and that was when it kind of hit me, the price of war, of knowing somebody, just even if in that brief moment, and now he's gone.
Now he's gone.
And he was a young captain. He had a family. He was. I wrote a letter 5 years later to his family because I just couldn't keep that message inside of me that I had met him. any longer. It started to well up in me that I needed to tell that family that I had saw him on the battlefield and how he was in high spirits and he was taking care of his men the way that he was. And I'll never forget him now. And it reminded me the price of any war.
Yeah.
No matter what side of the war you're on, the price of life is a high cost.
And one thing that I think that people miss when it comes to war, when a warrior goes down and he's lost, it's not just that person. Everyone that knows him, whether it's in the military, every family member, every friend, a piece of their heart dies too.
Yeah.
Because they've lost their loved one. So there is a huge price that's paid whenever we're at war. I pray for our troops every day, and especially right now because we're in conflict with Iran now. Mm-hmm. But I just thought I'd ask you while I've got you on that subject of Iran, what are your thoughts and what do you see as the outcome?
That's a complex question. I think after you go to Command General Staff College like I did, where you have 162 countries show up and everyone discusses leadership, the history of war, the way that we operate, and the way that we try to use always diplomacy through the UN or just directly back and forth between countries before anything escalates to a point where you really even have to do that. I think it's never easy. It's never easy, and the decisions can never always have a perfect answer. It is a difficult thing for any war, and I kind of grew to not hate. I mean, anytime you see somebody suffer, I think that's the hard part. And the thing is, these are people. All people are people, but it comes down to power. It comes back to money. It comes back to resources. It comes back to the needs and safety and security of countries to get along with each other. And when you feel like that's not going to happen, then things escalate. And I wish that we would. It would be nice if we never had another war. And we just lived peacefully throughout our whole world. But if you look back in history, it's never happened.
It's never happened.
We can happen? I don't know. Peace. I mean, people try to come to the table, but there's corruption. There's there's all kinds of things happen, right? And so
you're exactly right.
I feel I would hope that things get resolved quickly and people do the right thing. I can't say what the right thing is because I'm not at that level where I can affect what happens from what's been started or what needs to end, and I'm not in the know anymore with the knowledge or the security clearances to know what truly is happening, because we get a story from the media or other things that are really can be swayed, can be spun, can be twisted into what they want for one thing or another. I don't think anyone doesn't understand that nowadays. But it is a tough question. It's like, I hope that things can be peacefully resolved quickly. We can move on and we can get back to some, maybe 10 years of peace, 15 years of peace, no blood in the sand, no nothing. Let's just try to get along with each other and be peaceful. But, those are hard questions, like anything with that, anything with religion, those are all hard questions. I'm a warrior and a fighter. I spent 34 years in boots without a break in service. I joined the Army when I was 21, and I left the state, and I was probably the only guy that showed up with no coat on when I got there. And I'm standing in formation, and the drill sergeant looks at me and goes, "Where's your coat?" I was like, "Well, I thought the Army was going to give me everything," is what I told them. It's like they started laughing at me. He said, "Get inside and get a coat." So they gave me this London fog black raincoat. and I still had my long hair because I was a young, I was kind of a punk kid, until I kind of, somebody grabbed me by the short hairs one day and taught me I wasn't as tough as I thought I was for a minute. I had an attitude, and I had until the Army kind of straightened me out a little bit, and I had some structure. It took me a minute to get turned around, but then I turned everything that I could into good. Some of the best mentors in my life have been from the Army. General Flowers, he was the top general for the United States Corps of Engineers, and he was my battalion commander, and I was his Soldier of the Year. I had those other mentors around me. And mentors are big. People don't realize, man, when you find a good mentor, you grab on and hang on to that guy, because like those times is what's carried me through, when things got tough, some of the Army trainings or some of the competitions I had as an Army fighter, where we were one of the first teams that ever got to be paid to train. We trained in the Fort Bragg boxing gym with Buster Douglas and guys like that were in there, getting ready for a world boxing event. And, we were sharing the gym with those guys because we won in our state championships, me and two other guys from Puerto Rico. And I wrote a book, they're in my book, Step Out, Step Up book, because those guys we were the first ones. And, we were training before we would run in the morning in the 82nd, and even after, at the end of the day, when everybody else was pretty much hanging out in the barracks or whatever, we were going back down to the morale, welfare, and recreation areas where we could just get some training in. And sometimes if we couldn't train there, we would train it in the backyards of the housing, because that's the only place we had. And then a couple of years later, when it became an Olympic sport, then they started having training facilities for the Army teams. And then those teams then all get together. I just got together with that whole group of those guys this week in Minneapolis, and we got to hang out and go to dinner together and train and work out together and do some forms and stuff that we do. Some guys tested for the next belt, and we do a lot of good stuff for the youth athletes. I think it's a big, we have a book called One Team, One Fight, One Family. And today I got a real interesting message from the Grandmaster. His name's Grandmaster Rafael Medina, who was one of the team members that I was with. And he said, Mark, I see how much humbler you are over the years. I see that you're just really, really coming into that time of your life where things are really starting to do well for you. And I'm just grateful that we are brothers. And that meant a lot to me to get that message today.
Well, we all have a tendency to mellow, I guess, as age comes on us, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit of what he was seeing in you. Now, let's talk a little bit about your book real quick. How can people get this Step Out, Step Up?
Yeah, the book is very easy to find. It's on Amazon. If you just type in Step Out, Step Up, Mark Green, because there's more books that are named Step Out, Step Up, because titles are not protected in the book world. But if you look me up, you'll find the books. There's two of them, Warriors Code 001, where that's the 7 R's of when I came back and had to go through until I got ready to re-engage in regular life with my transformation. And then the Step Out, Step Up book, which is a memoir of my life. It talks about a lot of adversity. Like my family grew up and, we lived in a mobile home in Missouri for a while. First, we lived in a log cabin, which I loved those first 8 years of my life because I was barefoot running around the creek catching catfish and, chasing garden snakes and just doing great stuff, garden and the whole outdoor
good little
thing.
Kid stuff.
Oh, yeah. And then, and then life kind of fell apart, the whole family divorce thing and all the things that a lot of people go through in life, dysfunctional family stuff, all kinds of adversity started coming at me, just slinging left and right, everything from, there's a whole chapter on it pretty much in the beginning. It's like, but, I think it's like, but I think God was forming me into who he wanted me to be. And he was showing me all the wrong things so I could do the right things. And I think that was powerful. It was a powerful time in my life because I had to step into some things that I didn't want to do. because I had no choice, because, I lost a brother in St. Louis, and it was a very violent thing, and that was hard for me, and I had to kind of had to re-script some things, and I realized how powerful neuroplasticity is, and taking time to meditate, and putting positive things into your mind instead of negative, and just setting goals, and then not just meeting them but achieving them. Don't just go to the point where you think you're good. And I met a kid in Puerto Rico not long ago when we were doing disaster relief, and his family down there, that was after one of the hurricanes. It was Category 1, but we went over to help, and we met them at the community center, and he was number 4 in baseball in Puerto Rico at the time. He was like 14, 15, I think, and his brother and him were both good baseball players. But he said, I'm gonna make it in the MLB. Well, sure enough, that kid is like that close right now. Right. And every year I give him $500 for his gear, because I just realized that hey, you're a champion. And then his family, a couple years ago back, he's on the Puerto Rican, some of the top teams that are sponsored, and his family wanted to come to Fort Myers to see him play down there in the spring training area of Fort Myers. Well, they couldn't afford it. Well, that's okay, because Colonel Green's still got money coming from the Eagle every month. So, right. so we got him here, and they got to see him play, and they got to watch, and I put him up in the hotel. It was just, and so then they send me a real nice care package with Puerto Rican coffee and some magnets and some cool stuff. I'm a simple guy. I don't have all the, I've kept my life simple now. And I think that's the way to roll with people, because the thing is, it's like, I never had the big stuff, right? I was never really a person with a lot of toys or a lot of stuff or a lot of things. I just worked hard, and then, I got beat up a little bit in my relationships and stuff, like a lot of people do. But then I said, well, I just realized at some point I had more to give. So that's why, and my wife was like, why are you keep putting money into these veteran things and not getting anything back in return? Because I was doing golf tournaments and all this other stuff. And finally, I decided to create a nonprofit. And I just got the final approval for that nonprofit to help veterans. And then I was like, well, how are you going to help veterans? Well, I'm going to help them with their self, their service, their finance, and their mind, body, and spirit. And then I went to Italy with my wife because she got her doctorate degree. And I met this guy that was by the pool. The first day they were speaking English, and everybody's kind of, not being intrusive or anything. But the next day we walked by on the backside of the castle we were staying at. It was 11th AD castle, really old castle. And those guys were sitting there with cigars, and they said, "Hey, come on over." So he waves me over, and he hands me a cigar that said "Freedom" on it. I was like, "Okay, we can sit," Yeah. And he goes, "Well, what do you do? And who are you? And talk to me, And I was like, "Well, my name's Mark Green, and I have a company that's called My Silver Boots, and I have a company that I'm getting ready to start with, nonprofit which is a 501c3 tax exempt, called Able Valor." And he goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to help veterans." He goes, "Well, how are you going to help them?" I go, "Well, I got this website." He started laughing at me. He goes, "Website?" He said, "How are you going to help them with a website?" Yeah. And then he goes, I explained to him what I wanted to do, and he goes, "All right." He goes, "I'm going to tell you what I think you should do." And then I thought to myself, well, who is this dude, right? Like, I want to know who he was. Well, he goes, "I was one of the CEOs of Blue Cross Blue Shield. I ran the largest nonprofit in the world." I was like, holy cow.
You're talking to the right guy.
So he goes, here's what I want you to do, Mark. I want you to go back to Orlando, and I want you to get your donations. Don't worry about that. People will come, and people have money that you don't. He said, "Don't worry about that part. Just leave that up to God." But he said, once you start getting the donations, I want you to create a call center for veterans. Because right now, other than the suicide line and the VA, who's in the middle? Nobody. There's no call center for veterans where they can just call up and say, "Hey, I just want to talk to another veteran," or "I just got this one small problem." See, when I was an inspector general, that's what I did. I dealt with problems. So if I create a process where we can intake those veterans' questions and it fills towards those things, I've got something to give back still, right? Because the Army gave me a life. It gave me income. It gave me responsibility, discipline, and a lot of other things, right? And a pension.
And it's giving you a retirement. That's right.
And a good retirement. And yeah, I beat my body up. Believe me. I mean, I felt it. After 34 years, I'd get up like some of those NFL guys do every day. I feel it, right? And and even when I put the black belt on, I feel it still. I have to stretch, and I have to, like I go through the pain, and then I'm reaching for the Advil. I know what it's like. And so I realized that he was right, that all I have to do is build this call center, get the volunteers. And I know that if it's somebody that really is on the edge, then we're just going to pass it to the right people. If it's somebody that fits within the avatar of what they need, then we're going to intake them and help them. But it's not just going to be one and done. So like people say, well, you just did one phone call. Great. That's really nice. Thank you so much. See, I want to find a way where I can metric where they are to where they want to be, and then fill that gap so I can prove that just a self-help book or something is not enough. It's like just reading a book is not going to get you to change your habits or do something different to make your life better. And there's a lot of veterans that are struggling, and a lot of them are struggling financially, a lot of them struggling with relationships, but it's not just veterans, it's everybody that struggles that way with a lot of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that it's the right answer, what he gave me, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to listen to the guy that said I ran one of the largest nonprofits in the world. So
well, one thing I've always said, Colonel, is this: it's okay to fail. If you do fail, fail big, because you're going to learn from it. But always take advice from those that have been there and they have done that.
That's right.
You ran into exactly the right person. I do not believe in coincidences. I believe that was ordered steps right there when you actually met this gentleman and he gave you that advice.
Yeah.
Okay. And who better to take advice from than, once again, somebody that's been there and they have done that in a major way.
That's true. And when I first left the service, I started working on some positive mental attitude stuff and some principles, because I trained with Jack Canfield for 8 years. And I was on his breakout teams to help people find their big goal and then go for it, right? So like and those principles are very strong, like no blaming, no excuses, 100% accountability. Just using those three in anybody's life will improve their lives. If they took one thing out of this one podcast today, just do those three things for a month and see how your life changes.
Right.
But when I got out there, I realized that I had an ego, big one, too big. Right? And because one day they had an event in Arizona, and I went down there for the event, and it was called Breakthrough to Success. And he says, all right, we're all going to get up and hug each other. And I thought, oh, heck no. I'm a retired colonel with an ego. I ain't hugging nobody.
Right.
And I couldn't do it. And I walked out of the room. And then I looked around, and I was the only person outside of the room.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, something's broken.
Well, when you say ego, my pastor, Stephen Furtick, and a lot of people listening, they know who that is at Elevation Church. He preached on ego one Sunday. Ego, EGO, stands for edging God out.
Wow.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the second day, some lady followed me out, and she goes, hey, what's the problem? So we started walking. Well, she walks down the hallway with me and opens the door, and there's 2 chairs and a tissue and a little flower. And I was like, oh, you hoodwinked me. So she was a psychologist, and she goes, let me see why you can't hug. So now I can hug. We'll just keep it short.
Keep it short, but okay, we can do that. Hey, I want to switch gears. I want to switch gears for a second, because you're a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo. Let's talk a little bit how you got involved with the sport. And you went on to a pretty high level, winning championships, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to a real live Chuck Norris, even though Chuck's no longer here with us. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was in, I think, 5th grade, going into 6th grade, we had a school next to our house. And, we used to run around the school after hours just because we were bored and didn't have anything to do. And one night the gymnasium door was open, and it was a cool night, and it was about 6:30, and we were up there. I look in, and there's some karate guys in there. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool, man. Look at these karate guys, right? They had uniforms on, the belts and all that. And I was like, oh, it's almost like seeing your first football game, It's
Right.
like, oh, that's some cool stuff. What's going on there? And so we started watching them more and more on the nights that they were there. And then we started bugging the instructor, and it's like, hey, we want to take it. We want to take it. Well, it was a college program at the time for one of the community colleges. It wasn't a program for kids.
Right.
And we just kept bugging him. So finally he went back to the college and got approval to allow us to start training. So we started training. Well, because my family couldn't afford the training, I mean, it was $14 or $13, and I couldn't afford it. So I had to beg my mom for like 2 or 3 months. And finally she gave me the money. She goes, all right, just stop, just take the damn money. Quit begging me. So I took the money up there, and he let me start training. And I went to my first tournament, and it was sparring, so we were fighting. Well, I won first place, and I took that trophy home, and I set it on my little dresser in my little 2-bedroom mobile home there, and I was so proud of myself. I was like, wow, I just really, because there was a lot of adversity around me. And that was the first time I really felt good about myself. And then I just started advancing, and then I started training my brother, and we bought a $3 mat from a garage sale down the street and set it in front of the trailer because my mom couldn't afford both of us. I would train and then go home and train him. Well, he became second in the nation for Taekwondo and beat one of the top Koreans in the sport. In 1 year in Tampa, Florida, and he couldn't go to the Olympic training camp because we couldn't afford it. So it was unfortunate that we couldn't, as a family, find a way at that time to let him continue. But we amassed about 172 trophies over all those years fighting in the tournament circuits. We had so many of them that one of the bedrooms in our mobile home was full of trophies. My mom finally said, get him out of here. So our instructor had a tournament. We took all the labels off of them, and he repurposed them to the other people. So and gave us 2 weeks to a karate camp. But I trained all my life. Every time I moved around the Army, I found a different grandmaster or somebody else to train with. And then I just kept going up the ranks over and over, fighting in the tournaments, and and then when I found out about the Army team when I was at Fort Bragg, that's when things really started to turn on for me. And I ran into, what was really interesting is I ran into one of my trainers who was Grandmaster Sell, who was an evangelistic Taekwondo trainer that used to cut watermelons on my stomach before I joined the Army. He shows up at Fort Bragg on a contract for motivating soldiers. And he has bricks on this table up there, or on the platform up in the gym. And the chaplain knew that we were on the team. So he points at me during the thing while this guy's doing all this, and he goes, hey, we have a black belt right here. So there was 6 bricks up on the thing. And he goes, you gotta go up there and break those. Well, I'm a paratrooper in the room with all the other paratroopers in my uniform, and those guys are in their Taekwondo uniforms doing the demonstration.
Right.
And then the chaplain points me out and says it out loud, and all the paratroopers are like, yeah, let's go. And I could have got up and did it, or if I didn't, I probably would have been the lacking stock of the 82nd Airborne. So I got up and I walked up there, and I broke those bricks in uniform. And it was a wooden stage, and those things hit that floor, and it sounded like thunder.
Right.
And I never seen more paratroopers get crazier than I did in those 10 seconds. And I'll never forget that day, because he showed up, and I still have a letter from that man that came there that day that told me 2 things. He says, keep up with your Taekwondo and make sure that you're keeping God in your life. And
That's really good advice that he gave you too. You
He
know,
was a
you and I have a lot of similarities. I didn't win all those trophies, but when I was a young kid, I think I was in the sixth grade, was when I actually started taking Taekwondo. And I believe it was about $12
yeah,
for me to take those classes at the Y there in
yep,
Augusta, Georgia. But I remember it like it was yesterday. Now, I heard a story, and I don't know if this is true because you know how stories grow as time goes by
yeah.
and they get embellished. But there's a story out there, Colonel, that you won the championship with a broken foot.
Well,
Is that
that
true?
it is true. So, um, in the state championships for the lightweight black belt, that was my division. Um, the Army guys, we like I said, we trained before or after duty hours until we won in the state championships, and then they gave us a half a day where we could train on our own. And when the state championships happened, there was a fighter, and he was pretty fierce. The kid that I fought, the one that I fought for the championship, he was a fierce fighter. I mean, he was fast. He was he was strong legged. He was very flexible. Incredible spinning back kick. I was like, I had to stay away from him and had to watch, what I was doing so I didn't get hit by it. And my coach, after the second round, it's like when you're throwing your legs and arms like that, or any athlete that knows, like, you get to a plateau where you're like you're tired and you feel like you don't have anything more, but you got to dig deeper.
Yeah.
That was that moment where I was like, my coach is like, he's sitting there in between for the break, and he goes, "Are you coming with us or not?" And he knew that the last round was going to matter, because I think he won the first round, I won the second, or it was vice versa. But at the end of the day, I realized that if I didn't dig deeper, I wasn't going to make it.
Right.
I was going to be second place, right? And second place is your first loser, right? So
That's what I've always said. That's right.
I was like, nope, I'm going to give it everything. So I dug deep, and then I went on the attack instead of just the defense. And I started hitting him harder, and I started, so I threw a round kick, and then I could tell as soon as I hit him, something broke, and I could feel it, and it's like, yeah, I was hobbling a little bit, but I didn't want him to know that I had broke it, because then I'm telling, and then,
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I finished that round with a broken foot, and I won, and then all of the three fighters that did win, we ended up in the paper, and we ended up getting the notice from the grandmasters that are around there that were Korean, and they sponsored us in. Myung Mays was her name. She still trains in Fort Bragg. She has schools there in Fort Bragg. She's an incredible woman who supported us as Army fighters. And then we fought in 2 national championships back to back in those years. From that, because you had to win in the state championships in order to go to the national championships. And the only guy that beat me was a guy who won the gold medal the prior year.
Well, pain is temporary,
Oh
but
yeah,
that glory of victory lasts forever.
that is
And so
true.
that story that you got right there, that lasts forever.
Yeah. Now, luckily I didn't break something bigger, but I had plenty of bruised ribs, plenty of broken toes, plenty of days after those tournaments and stuff where you would be like, I'm trying to run in the Airborne, and I got bruised feet all the time. I remember going to and if you look at my medical records, like, what are they called, tarsals or something like that, your toes. It's like they're always like, writing it up, like always wrapping my feet because I was kicking so hard. My legs were so strong from being a paratrooper. You kick so hard, but yeah, I enjoy that, and I still enjoy it with all these guys that we just hung out with that are this one team, one type, one team, one fight, one family group. They're all grandmasters, most of them now. I'm a master instructor. I'm only a 5th degree. Some of them are 7 and 8s.
Only a 5th degree, y'all.
The guy that trains. These are the ones that coach the guys for the Olympics too. all the coaches are there that train guys, and some of them did make Olympic medals in their fights. So I just love those guys. They're like my brothers, and when we get together, it's really enjoyable. To be that. And being on the pioneer team of the first team, that's kind of like it's kind of like Bill Curry being the in the first Super Bowl that wrote in my book. It's like he played for Vince Lombardi. I was like, holy cow, and he wrote a whole praise. Well, that's his blurb on top of the book, but then he wrote a whole praise page for me, and that's Bill Curry's praise page, that he wrote for me, which made me feel like, wow, these guys really do care. Surrounding yourself with good people nowadays, it's a rarity.
It really is, and common sense is not so much common anymore. We've got a lot of nonsense out there, and we need some really strong, serious-minded folks that'll step forward, righteous people like yourself. And I'm just happy and elated to be able to call you my friend, my brother. So we've got a couple of minutes left. Why don't you share with everybody how they can get in touch with you? Tell them again how they can get the books
Sure.
and stay in contact with you.
Sure. So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to make that first initial contact with me. If you have questions about Able Valor as the nonprofit, or if you have questions about my company, My Silver Boots, I'm actually going to be marketed by one of the top marketers in the world. His name is Brian Delaney. He is a very good marketing person, and they're going to be marketing my work to help mentor other men, because it's something that I feel like it's kind of like if you had a circle your wheel, and every one of those areas and pillars of your life were faith, fitness, finance, friendships, fight, and one of them was out of whack, the wheel doesn't roll. So, sometimes you got to work on something in your life, and I want to be that mentor to people when they need that. But they can find my books on Amazon, both of them, Warriors Code 001. It's small, and it was cut small on purpose because it then fits in a cargo pocket for veterans that are leaving the service, and they have a transition book to read. And then Step Out, Step Up is also on Amazon. So both of those books can be found on Amazon. My Able Valor nonprofit is just brand new. So we do have a board, but we don't have any donations yet. We're just getting started to get because we're going to be working on the call center. But the other thing we did with the Able Valor is we created what's called Veterans Across the Heartland. We took interviews, and we interviewed the guy that saw the flag raised over Iwo Jima. And he was 99 years old on his Tyler, Texas ranch in Texas. And his name is Stuart McNally, and I'm on the back of his book as a blurb. And he wrote the book, It's a Blessed Life. And his daughter, Tamara Bolton, interviewed him while they were having coffee on the porch every day and wrote the book. And he talks about his military career, what an incredible man that man was. And he's now passed, but I was fortunate and grateful that I got that time to interview him, because that is a big deal. And that Veterans Across the Heartland thing, we did 14 days, 4,000 miles across the country, interviewing veterans from World War II till today, to get their take on what was it like for them to be in the service, what was their transition like, what was their life like in difficulty, and what they overcame, and then I thanked them for their service. And we have some really great interviews that we're going to be putting out, and we're going to be on QTV pretty soon. We're going to have our own station where we can share some of that work, and I'm excited about the future for that, because God is guiding me now. It's not like me anymore. I didn't realize he was going to do way more than what I expected.
Well, Colonel, I appreciate everything that you said, and you talked about, thanking him for his service. Everybody says that. It's almost like a cliche now that they say that. I say it a little bit different. And Colonel, I want to end with this. I have a warrior's prayer, and it goes like this. Oh Lord, with all your grace, help me to run a good, clean race and win. If you should choose that I should lose, keep me from ever giving in. Rise up. And I'll end with this. Colonel, thank you for protecting my family.
Thank you, Robby.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to let you know who we've got up next week. We've got a really special guest coming. Once again, thank you again, Colonel.
You bet. Take care, everybody.
What do you do when life knocks you down? You rise up. In Touchdown America, coach, speaker, and presidential candidate Robby Wells shares his remarkable journey through football, politics, adversity, and second chances. Packed with hard-won wisdom and powerful inspiration, this must-read memoir will challenge you to pursue your dreams, learn from every setback, and rise again. Get your copy of Touchdown America today.
So we're back once again. What a great time we just had with Colonel Mark Green. Next week, make sure that you are here. Man, I've got a special treat. Whether you are male or female, you're going to want to tune in on this one. I've got Trishana Eloise, and she's going to be on. She's one of the top female fitness instructors in the entire world. And just 2 years ago, she was named International Model of the Year. We're really blessed that we are getting these type of individuals to come on the show. So we will see you then. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Rise up. We'll talk next week.
Thanks for joining us on Rise Up with Robby. If today's conversation encouraged or challenged you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this live stream with your family and friends. Join us again every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Until next time, keep your faith strong, keep moving forward, and remember, it's always time to rise up.